are those conversations we have with a friend where we somehow cover off everything from interest rates to impulse buys, and it just seems to click. That feeling, that's exactly what we're bringing into this new season of our podcast. Real conversations. I want fresh approaches and, yes, a few laughs and probably a puppy story or two. Because money, well, it touches everything and it's time we talked about it. I want it to be open conversations and I want everything to be about solving problems. Hi, I'm Jen Richardson and welcome back to the Jen Richardson Show. If you're new here, I'm so glad that you found us. And if you're a long-time listener to our podcast that used to be called Dollars and Dreams, thanks for sticking around. So we haven't done our podcast for a little while now, but we decided that we needed to bring it back because we've been getting a lot of questions from our listeners and our members in our community. And it got to the point that we wanted to make sure that we could answer those questions in the most efficient forum that we could. Hence, we've changed our podcast now to the Jen Richardson Show, just to separate from what we had before, where I used to just talk about a topic. So our new format's going to be with a guest host, and I'll introduce you to our guest host very soon. We're going to do questions and answers from our listeners or our viewers, as we said, or from our community. So it's not going to be me talking about a topic anymore. It's going to be questions you have, answers that you want, topics that we see getting asked around in our community. And of course, those topics that sometimes we just don't want to even bring up because we think we should know. Money is part of our life and it's very much a part of the society that we live in. And we aren't taught it at school, and it is one of those skills that we need to have, and it's what I want to be able to bring, because financial knowledge is what will give us all financial freedom. Financial freedom isn't about being rich, and it's not about traveling first class or having, a handful of diamonds, although they would be nice. It's about knowing that you're not stressed with money. It's about knowing that when a bill comes in, you're not going to panic. It's about knowing that when you get to the cash register to buy your groceries, that you can actually pay for them. And it's about building a life that you want. And that is my wish for every woman that listens to this podcast, is that they are not feeling stressed about money, that that they're feeling comfortable making decisions about money, and they get to live the life that they want to live. So the podcast is changing slightly. From my age group, we've always looked after women in their 40s and 50s mainly. Our new host, who I'll introduce you to, as I said, in a few moments, is in her 20s, and she's going to bring a very different perspective to our show. So, Adrianna, welcome to the Jen Richardson Show.
Thank you.
So, Adrianna has been part of my firm here, 123 Financial Group, for getting close to 7 years, or may even already be
7 in March.
There you go. She was fresh-faced out of school, very shy, didn't like to put her point forward in that first 6 months, but now we all run terrified of Adrianna. So she came in fresh-faced from school, no idea about money, finance, or anything like that. So, it's something that you've learnt over the last 7 years, and she's become very proficient at money matters, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. So Adrianna's going to be part of the show every week. We will still sometimes have some guest speakers on. But we're going to do our show, as we said, as a question and answer mostly, or if we don't have any questions that week, which I highly doubt, we will just pick a topic and talk about it. So, Adrianna, over to you. Tell our listeners or our viewers a little bit about you and your story.
Hi, so I've just turned 25. I'm Newcastle born and bred. I grew up in a single mum household with me and my older sister. So I grew up with didn't experience it a lot, but I think my mum did, a lot of financial stresses. So seeing the Dollars and Dreams before, and now the Jen Richardson Show and your courses and that come alive, like it's really, like, I don't know, touches home because I'm like, that's something that my mum can use now, but could have used back then as well. So it's really nice to see that now all these other women that need the help, it's there for them. So, so like I said, I'm 25. I just ended my my first lot of debt. I bought a house nearly 2 years ago now, and just recently got married. 18 months ago, my husband and I adopted a rescue puppy. His name's Rafa, and he is my baby. I love him so much. Loved him that much that we rescued another one 2 weeks ago, little Winnie. So they're polar opposites. He's very, very out there, very crazy, and she's so timid and just wants cuddles. So it's a nice opposite ends of the scale to have. But that's me.
That's you. So tell me a little bit about home ownership for you, because Adrianna's being very modest here. She is actually a qualified mortgage broker as well. So you've, I guess, come into the space of home ownership with that background that you understand mortgages and the costs that come with owning a house, purely, I guess, through the applications that you've been doing for people, because part of that mortgage broking application is we have to estimate what their costs are, don't we, of, I guess, everything. So tell me a little bit about home ownership for you. So you and Ethan bought your first house, what did you say, nearly 2 years ago?
Nearly 2 years ago, April 24 we bought. So.
Perfect. So you went from, you and Ethan both still lived at home. You lived at home with your mum. Ethan lived at home with his parents.
Yeah.
You bought your first house, went into your first major debt, although I think you'd had car loans before that, hadn't you?
Yeah, Ethan had. He had a car loan.
So you had become part of the process of paying off loans.
I had a little bit of knowledge, and I think definitely the mortgage broking side really did give me an advantage going into it. Ethan was a little bit less prepared and a little bit more shocked by all the costs and the process of it all. But yeah, the first year was definitely, it was an expensive one. But now, like what everyone would tell me was, don't worry, you'll get used to it. You won't even notice the repayments, which is sort of where we're sitting now. It's a bit more at ease, especially now that the wedding's done as well. We're sitting a bit more comfortably.
And so do you think that ease and comfort is because you're now prepared with those monthly budgets and you do some sort of spending plan or something like that? What was the biggest shock that you had with home ownership as far as costs go in that first 12 months particularly?
Yeah, I think all the different bills. Like I obviously, doing the applications for clients, I knew there were all the different types, like your land rates, your electricity, your water, like your phone, but then you needed the internet as well, television, all of that. I definitely was aware of it, but I think living it, like your life changing that much, it was definitely a bit of a shock. I know Ethan's biggest shock was the first interest payment coming out. He was very
because of course when you buy your first home, those interest payments are quite high because you're borrowing so much in the climate that we live in.
Yes.
The house that you purchased, you probably got in before, I guess, some of the latest interest rate rises, or was it high when you first bought?
It was, I wouldn't say it was high, but it was just sort of off the back of COVID and, where rates were at 1.99%. We had bought when that rise sort of was starting.
And of course, the value of your home now is significantly more than when you 100%. Purchased it because, all the prices have gone up.
Yep.
And then on top of that, as you said, you then got a puppy. And I think your puppy came the same day that you moved into the house.
It was the day after.
That was right. So that was your home welcoming gift from Ethan?
Yeah.
It was a surprise?
Moving in didn't quite go to plan. We had a few hiccups just on the literal moving in aspect with removalists and things. So I was a bit overwhelmed. So he thought, let's chuck a 8-week-old puppy in the mix too, but I wouldn't have changed it. It's just been amazing.
And then on top of that, you were engaged, so you had to save for a wedding. And again, what was the biggest, I guess, surprise with weddings for you?
It was definitely, I think like the planning aspect and all the little things that went into the planning, and then all those little costs as well. Like, you think, oh, I'll have the ceremony, but you need the decorations, you need the seating. Do you need entertainment or like a musician for when you're walking down the aisle? You need the celebrant. You need all these things, and you just like, you don't. Well, I didn't personally. I didn't think about it initially, and it was all those hidden costs that definitely were a shock. Threw the budget out just a little, but we made it work.
And so with the cost was, we all think of the wedding dress and the venue and everything. As far as the costs go, was it the little things that ended up adding up to more than what you thought and I guess what the bigger things were? Or?
Yeah, because I think I sort of had an idea of what those big things were, and when I did the budget, I was like, all right, we're not sitting too bad. Like, I'm quite happy with that. But then it was the little things that came in, and you just started to go, oh, I'll just add that, I'll grab that while I'm here, and they just all add up, and you get to that point, sort of at the end of the planning where you're thinking, oh, damn it, I haven't got this sorted, I need to get this. Oh, you know what's another $1,000 when you're spending X amount already? So yeah, it was.
And I do remember in those weeks leading up to the wedding, you were ducking out at lunchtime because I've just got to go and grab something else, or I've got to go and grab this, or I'd forgotten about this. And
lots of those.
Yeah. So what would your advice be to somebody that's planning a wedding? What financially, obviously not emotionally or anything like that. What would be your advice?
I would definitely sit down, do your budget, but then pick probably your 3 most important things that you want at the wedding. Like personally for me, the band was one of them, because I love to get up. I love to have a bit of a dance. So I knew that there was a particular band I wanted, and that it was probably a bit more than what I'd hoped to spend, but because it was so important, then I substituted, different flowers that weren't as expensive, so I could afford that. So I definitely...
So a compromise.
Yeah, be a lot of compromise. So yeah, pick your 3 top things that you want, like you really want, that you feel like you wouldn't want to get through the day without, and then fill in the gaps sort of, and stay in your budget. It's a big one.
Yeah, and I think, from an older person's perspective, weddings are emotional.
Yeah.
And it is an emotional time, and you want it, and that industry plays on it a little bit.
Yes.
I think sometimes you've got to separate your emotions from the decisions.
Exactly.
Because you can get tied up because you're so emotionally caught up in it.
There was a few decisions that Ethan got to make, because I was like, I can't do this. I need a sound mind. Someone else.
And so you and Ethan come from very different backgrounds. You said you grew up in a single mum household with an older sister. Ethan is the polar opposite.
Total opposite. He's both his parents still together. Beautiful family. 2 brothers. They're a very big family, and there's 1 girl cousin. I don't know how many cousins there are, but they're all boys. The whole household. It was crazy the first time walking into that house, but...
And so from a financial point of view, do you see any differences in how you were raised to how Ethan was raised? Or
Very big differences. So obviously growing up in a single mum household, money was tight. We didn't get to have all the things, we didn't get to do all the things we wanted to do. It was always a stressful factor for my mum particularly, and obviously as kids we didn't fully understand, but we could tell, we could sense it. So, which has probably helped me growing up, at 23. I'd like to think that's pretty crazy. Already buying your house, I was already engaged, the wedding's done, I've got the dogs. I feel like I'm in a good position now because of how I grew up. Ethan, he's a bit more lenient with his money because he grew up in a more stable household, 100% compared to me. And he is a very big person that wants the memories. Money comes and goes, but memories will last you the lifetime. And so he's a bit, oh yeah, we'll spend this, we'll buy that. So got to rein him in a bit, which I had to that first few years. But we're definitely, I think we're a good mix with it.
And I think that's a bit of financial literacy that you have, because when you started with us straight out of school,
yes,
fresh-faced, this was a whole different world for you, looking
Crazy.
at finance. We're an accounting practice here. So, you didn't know anything about tax really. Lots of things you've learned over the years. And I guess that's something that we want to always point out to everybody, that you started 7 years at, basically zero financial knowledge. And here you are now, you've managed to save for a house. You've managed to save to pay for a wedding. You're in a good financial position.
Yeah.
You actually had a conversation with me yesterday about your superannuation, and that's something that would never have happened.
No.
Even 4 or 5 years ago.
No.
So I think the message that you are now portraying to people is that you're not born with financial knowledge.
No,
this is a skill that you can learn and learn along the way.
100%.
I'm sure you've made money mistakes. I've made money mistakes,
Yes.
and I have a degree in this world. And so I guess that's the perspective that you're going to bring to this podcast, is that, I'm here to help, I guess, women and relate to women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, whereas you're probably here to relate to the women in their 20s and into their 30s, because some of those women in their 30s are going to be in the position that you're in now. So, because a lot of people aren't buying their first home until they're in their 30s and getting married till they're in their 30s. So whilst you're in your 20s, your demographic that you're going to relate to is those 20s and 30s. And so that's what we're wanting to bring to the Jen Richardson Show podcast, is that we're going to cover everybody, whether they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'm getting very close to my 60s, so that demographic. So we want to bring that to the table. I mean, most people on this podcast will have known my story, so I don't want to go back over that, of course. But this is what we want to do in our podcast. Some of the questions that we're going to get from our listeners or our viewers is going to be more related to me, and I'll answer those questions. Some of them will be related to your age group, and you'll get to answer those questions so that we can do it. So that's it for today. Today was really just a little bit of an introduction podcast, just finding out who Adrianna is, or we call her Ads. She's probably got 30,000 different nicknames. We call her Ads. Ethan calls you Adri.
Adri calls me.
You've got Mo, you've got lots of them, but we'll just call her Ads here because that's what we tend to call her here in the office. So it was just an introduction. First podcast that Ads has been on, so it's been a little bit of a shock talking in front of the camera, and that's okay. It's a skill, just like money and finance. It's a skill that we all learn. So any mortgage broking questions, Adrianna's your girl. She looks after, anywhere from first home buyers to refinancing, investors,
commercial equipment.
Yep, commercial. And because we're an accounting practice, she does all the equipment finance as well. So anything along those lines, any questions you've got, any pre-approval questions that you might have, or just questions about mortgages, how to do things, Adrianna's your girl. We'll answer any of the finance questions, anything that you've got, but it is going to rely on your participation, because otherwise it is going to be a very short podcast episode every week. So we'll be back every week with answering questions that we've had come in over the last week or so, whether that's emailed through to us or
DM us on Instagram, so at jenrichardson.co. Send it through there, or email at hello@jenrichardson.co.
Perfect. And of course, we've also got our community Facebook page, which is
The Queen Bees.
The Queen Bees. Yes, that's it. You can jump onto that. You can ask anything in there. That's a closed group. So if you're a little bit embarrassed about asking anything, please join in and join that group, and you can ask anything that you need to ask. We're going to go through a lot of things like from money mindset, because I'm a huge mindset person, through to superannuation, investing 101. Not going to give you advice, because we're not allowed to give advice, of course, on where to invest. It will just be the basic stuff of what you can and can't do. We'll talk about loans, how to pay them down as quickly as you can. We're going to talk about why we don't believe in budgets, but we do believe in a spending plan. Talk about consolidating your loans, refinancing, the tips and pitfalls of it all, and just anything to do with money. We've got our website, jenrichardson.co, where you'll find a ton of free downloads, resources. What else do we have on there?
Calculators.
Yep, calculators. The calculators are phenomenal.
Yes.
So you can go through and look at if you pay extra on your home loan, what it does. What else do the calculators have we got?
Comparing home loan rates, different products.
Investing, if you invest so much, what that looks like in so many years.
I think there's a couple of super ones as well.
Yeah, there is. So I think there's something like 26 different calculators. So jump onto our website, jenrichardson.co, to find any of those resources. We also, or I do a free webinar on the third Wednesday of every month. Our next one is coming up on the 21st of January, so just jump in and register for that. It's called Financially Fit and Fabulous. I go through the 5 steps of getting control of your money and your finances. We've got our My Money Makeover course, which is being rewritten at the moment, and we'll be relaunching that mid-February. We're going to include the usual things we've got in there, which is our mindset, finding out what you owe, or what we call our ground zero, looking at where you spend your money, putting a spending plan in place, our banking system. We're also going to cover off Investing 101 and superannuation. So there's a lot there. It's written modules that you can watch the videos on, but there is a weekly Zoom call with me where you get to ask all the questions and get help with anything that you need help with. And I think that's about it for today. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be dropping a podcast every week. As we said, it is a question and answer style one where we want to be able to help you. So the only aim of this podcast is to help you along your financial journey. As we always say, financial knowledge is what gives you financial freedom. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ads.
Thank
First
you.
podcast, you've done well. So we'll see you in a week's time. If you need anything in the meantime, reach out to us, as Adrianna said, on our DMs, or email us at hello@jenrichardson.co. We've got our YouTube channel where we put a video up every week as well. And thanks, and we'll see you in a week's time. Bye for now.